Hello everyone, I'm Sam Grogan from Queen Mary University of London. I'm doing my LLM there, and today I'm going to talk to you about access rights. I did this work with Alicia MacDonald at the Stanford Center for Internet and Society. To give you a brief overview of what access is, it is one of the core privacy protection safeguards and provides consumers with the ability to view data collected about themselves by other entities. Our work focused on data collection by internet companies and data brokers. We conducted a survey among 873 US and Irish internet users and sought to examine attitudes to data access. The reason we chose the US and Ireland, we had many reasons. Firstly, most internet companies and data brokers are often US-based, and it's important to examine the environments in which they operate. Ireland was important to the study because it continues to be the main operating location for tech companies in Europe. Today, a data subject can exercise their right of access through limited legal measures or technological tools. Access is a recognized privacy right both in Ireland under the OECD guidelines on the protection of privacy and in the US under the Fair Information Practice Principles. Access is important for many reasons. Firstly, it is integral in ensuring the effectiveness of the other privacy principles. If we can't see what data is collected about us, how can we believe with absolute certainty the promises made to us in privacy policies? If we can't see what data is collected, how can regulatory bodies carry out their enforcement tasks efficiently? Access is also important for issues such as user trust and control over their data. So looking at access from a legal perspective, the US follows a sectoral approach to privacy, and what this means is that there is no uniform data protection law in the US. Rather, they have federal and state-specific laws relating to certain types of data. So for example, in the US, a US citizen could use HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, to access their health information. Whereas Ireland, which follows an omnibus approach to data protection, has a more generalized right of access under their Data Protection Amendment Act 2003. And the right of access, which is laid down under Article 12 of the European Data Protection Directive, allows a data subject to request access to any data that's processed about them by a data controller. We recently saw in Europe the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, was recently agreed, and it will be interesting to see what this does for access. Reading the text, it doesn't look like much. The only relevant change is that initial subject access requests must now be provided for free of charge, and they can only charge in respect of subsequent access requests to the same data. But whether law alone is an effective measure to provide effective access is questionable. Most of the participants in our study weren't aware of access laws. So turning to look at access from a technological perspective, this is an example of one of the access tools available today. This is Google's ad categories. And as you navigate across the web, as you navigate across Google services, different tracking technologies seem to form a picture of what you are interested in. And you are then assigned an interest category based on that information. What's interesting about this tool and many others is you simply see an ad category. You're not given true access to how the links are established. So as you can see here, this user is interested in air travel, but we're not given access to the information that was collected about them to see exactly how did this come about, what did they do online to result in an air travel ad category. So our research sought to answer 5 questions. Firstly, how aware are internet users of current access mechanisms? Secondly, are internet users in fact interested in using their access rights? What do internet users know about data brokers? We then also showed our participants prototypes of proposed access systems, and we sought to examine if those tools would be useful to them. And finally, we sought to examine whether there were differences in attitudes between US and Irish internet users to access. So as far as the study itself, it was a 40-question survey designed to analyze attitudes to access. We ran a pilot study from August to December 2013, and after a year of further revision, we launched a final study in April 2015. We conducted this study via Kint, which is a panel company that specializes in sourcing survey respondents. And as this was an online study, we took many precautions to ensure the validity of results. And I refer you to the paper for those details. With regard to the questionnaire, we defined access and data brokers for the participants at the start of the study, and then the questions were split into 4 categories: awareness, interest in access, data brokers, and proposed systems. The answer selections were also randomized for questions to further ensure validity of results. So we're now going to dive into the results, but just before we do, due to time constraints, I'm just going to highlight a subset of results and the ones that were most interesting, but the paper does have many more. So turning to look at awareness, we asked our internet users whether they could access data from different sources. 2 of those sources are on screen: data protection commissions and credit reporting agencies. The US is the top bar of each category, and Ireland is the bottom. Dark blue indicates a yes response, light blue unsure, and red no. Less than 50% of Irish participants could identify that they can access their data through the Data Protection Directive. 18% of Americans mistakenly believe they have the same right. More American participants were aware of their right to access credit information through credit reporting agencies than Irish participants who have that same right of access through the Irish Credit Bureau. Overall, we found that Americans are more likely to be aware of their limited right to access credit information than Irish participants are to know about their expanded right of access through the Data Protection Directive. But in each jurisdiction, people are confused in general over where to go for access. To further gain information about how aware users are about access, we asked users whether they believed access laws in their country provide for access to more, the same, or less types of information as laws in other countries. On the graph, blue bars represent the US, red bars are Ireland. American participants believe that US access laws provide for stronger access rights than other countries, whereas Irish users were as likely to believe their rights are on par with other countries. The US does not necessarily have stronger access rights than Irish users. Due to the Data Protection Act in Ireland, which is broader in scope, it could even be argued Irish people have more access than Americans. So turning to look at the interest section of our work, we asked our users whether they would desire to have an access right. On the graph, the US is on the left, Ireland on the right. Dark blue indicates strongly agree, light blue agree, red disagree, and pink strongly disagree. As privacy is discussed more in human rights terms in Europe, we expected that our results might mirror that. But as you can see from the graph, participants from both jurisdictions see access as a right, with small percentages disagreeing. When asked why the participants answered as they did, the most popular sentiment was, "It is my data." So there's very much a right attitude towards access. We then asked a more concrete and personal question to users: if they had an access right, would they have the desire to use it? Again, the US is on the left, Ireland on the right. Dark blue indicates yes, pink indicates no. The main reasoning people answered so strongly that they would use an access right was to see what data has been collected about them by companies. And the second most popular reason would be to correct inaccuracies in that collected data. So before I show you the proposed systems we showed participants, this is another access tool. This is Yahoo Add Interest Categories, and much like Google's tool, it shows you interest categories that have been assigned to you. But again, you can't access the information that was collected about you to establish these links. Other tools that are in existence today include choice.microsoft.com and data broker axioms about the data.com. Usage rates for these tools are extremely low. We asked our participants if they had used these tools. The most popular was Google's tool, with 23% of Irish participants and 18% of Americans reporting using it. But we might expect that our self-reported data is astonishingly high for these results because industry reports have cited lower rates. So moving on to the proposed systems, this is the first of 3 images we presented to our participants. And we showed 50% of the participants a scaled down ad manager and the other 50% an expanded version, which we'll get onto in a moment. This scaled down system is largely what we've seen before, a simple ad category assignment, but nothing more. When we asked participants if they would find a tool like this useful, 64% of Americans and 71% of Irish respondents reported that it would be. So then moving on to the expanded system, This is, again, showing you the interest category, but what differs about this tool is you can see a basis for interest, and in a second interface, more information on how the connection was made. So here, this user is interested in travel, but we're able to see that this was assigned to them in more information because they had searched terms such as holiday, flights, USA, they had booked flights on Expedia, and they had searched for hotels. More of our users who were shown this tool rated it as useful than those showed the scaled down version at 71% US and 72% Ireland. The third tool we presented to our respondents was a data broker hub, and this was inspired by Reclaim Your Name. And Reclaim Your Name was an initiative put forward by Julie Brill, a former commissioner of the Federal Trade Commission. And Reclaim Your Name would provide access to users regarding information data brokers specifically have collected about them, control how it's used, and correct information. This tool fared the worst of the three, but still did quite well, with 64% of Americans and 60% of Irish respondents rating it as a useful tool. We suspect this is because most internet users haven't heard of data brokers. So in conclusion, our work highlights that access is important to internet users, but in general, they are unaware of access laws. However, they do see access as a right. Current laws do not give effective access in practice, but we have seen proposals for more specific legislation put forward. In the US, we saw Obama's Consumer Privacy Bill of Rights, and also Senator Markey had released a data broker bill, but these are still in their infancy and more developments are to come. It will be interesting in Europe to see if the General Data Protection Regulation does anything for this area. On text, it doesn't look likely, but in practice, it may be different. We conclude that a central hub, while it may be complex to engineer at present, it may be the only long-term solution to effective access. Asking internet users to go to each specific company to request access to their information may be too high a burden for effective access, but in the interim, any attempts at access are welcomed. And we encourage companies to continue working on their own tools and educating the users how to use them with the expectation of a federated hub to follow. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll welcome any questions you have.